Hello, my name is Sandra Juarez, and in this short video, I'm going to give you a demonstration, a general overview of ECW version 11. So let's begin here. On the top left-hand corner, you see my name in parentheses. This is just a clear confirmation that I have indeed logged into ECW under my own profile, and I'm not documenting under someone else's profile. The band below it is pretty much used for administrative purposes only, with the exception of this file category. If you needed to refresh your screen, you can go ahead and click on the File tab here, scroll down to Refresh Counts, select that, and that should update your screen. Below that here, it states the EMR that you're using, which is eClinicalWorks, and the version, which is 11. We continue to scroll down this band here. We're going to see the patient search engine window. This is the man with the magnifying glass. If we click on that, you're going to get a patient lookup pop-up. Here is where we're able to search for our patient 10 different ways or so. Name, social security number, date of birth, account number, and so on. For this particular demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and select name. I'm going to type in the patient's last name. Once I do that, it's going to search the database. It's going to pull up any patients with the same last name or somewhat identical to the last name that I typed in. The patient that I'm looking for happens to be the first one. It's already been highlighted, and I'm going to click OK. Once I do that, it'll take me to the patient hub. The patient hub is the shortcut to anywhere you want to go in the patient's record and the patient's chart. You can see here in the patient hub, you have various categories that you can tap into to get the patient information that you may need. So again, this is called the patient hub. Always confirm that you do have the correct patient, and it should be listed here in parentheses. Within the patient hub, moving right below that here, you're going to find a bunch of blue tabs here. And I will go ahead and tap into all these categories, whether they're blue and the silver tabs below. Keep in mind that based on your role here at Unity, you may or may not have access to all these tabs. So let's just begin. If I click on the lab tab here, it's going to actually allow you to view all the lab orders that have been placed for this patient. Here you're able to identify whether they've been they're a current lab, if it's a future lab, or if it's a lab that's been placed via a telephone encounter. Also here, each lab order, it may or may not have a pink paperclip or a gray paperclip. And this is pretty much once you see either paperclip, if you click on it, you'll be able to view the actual lab results that have interfaced back over from LabCorp. You'll see here that it displays the actual order date, the collection date of the lab order, the result date, as well as the name of the lab order. So now we're going to go ahead and exit out of here. Diagnostic imaging, we don't really do a lot of x-rays here within Unity. So I'm going to go ahead and skip over to the procedure tab. The procedure tab is a lot like the lab tab that we just visited. It pretty much houses all our procedures, nurse visits, wet mounts, and so on. Also, if there's any results or any documentations attached to it, it's going to be via a paperclip. The immunizations and the therapeutic injections, if we click on that, it's going to give you a brief summary. It's going to be split into 3 categories: histories, immunization schedules, and flu schedules. So here, automatically in the history, it's going to basically display all the immunizations the patient's had. The P is for pending, meaning it's been ordered, but it hasn't been processed. The immunization schedule, if I click on that, it's going to actually inform providers, clinical staff of what's been completed, what's recommended, and what's due now. And then you have the flu schedule. Exit out of that. We have the referrals tab. Here is where we house all the patient's referrals. We have 2 tabs here, incoming and outgoing. Here at Unity, we pretty much generate all our referrals are outgoing to outside entities. So if we click on this tab, we're able to see all the referrals that have been generated for this patient. I'm going to exit out of here. Allergies. If I click on the allergies, it will display any documentations made regarding the patient's allergies. Please note here, within ECW, you're not always going to get this pop-up alert notifying you that, hey, this patient has allergies. You will have to actually go into that particular tab of the allergy section in the patient start to view the type of allergies the patient has. It's been split into two categories, structured or non-structured. It'll list here what the patient's allergic to, the reaction the patient has, the type of allergy it is, whether the status, whether it's active or inactive, the level of criticality, and based in the onset date if the patient is given that. So I'm going to go ahead and close. The last remaining tabs here we don't really use at Unity. Below here you have the patient's demographics, you have the patient's date of birth, the age. It'll indicate whether the patient's web enabled, the account number. It'll list the patient's PCP and the rendering provider. Below here, in this category here, it's pretty much, it's indicating to providers or clinical staff what's been assigned and what's pending, what needs to be reviewed by the provider. So we got 35 labs that need to be reviewed, 28 telephone encounters, and so on. Below here, it'll list any appointments, the last appointment the patient's had, the next appointment, and in which facility. Moving below here, you have quite a few great tabs, and I've said before, based on your role here at Unity, you may or may not have access to them. So I'm going to try to give you as much information pertaining to each tab. The new appointment here at Unity, before the COVID, not every discipline group was able to schedule new appointments, but this has been slowly changing. So based on your role here, you may have to schedule your own appointments. And you could either do it through the resource schedule or through the patient's hub. Telephone encounters. Telephone encounters are messages that become a permanent part of the patient's record, and it's used throughout Unity. And usually they are sending messages to providers or to clinical staff that are medically related, of course, about the patient. So I'm going to go ahead and click New Telephone Encounters here because I want to generate a new one. You're going to ignore this billing alert, and it's going to automatically going to have the pop-up for telephone encounters appear. So I will quickly demonstrate how to generate a telephone encounter. The answered by category will always be your name since you're generating the telephone encounter. The patient's name, since you've actually initiated the telephone encounter from the patient's hub, the patient's name is automatically going to appear. The date, the time. If this message that you're about to send to anyone within Unity is of high importance, you want to click on that. And that will actually turn these jelly beans that you see here on the top right-hand corner red. The provider will automatically be defaulted to the providers that's been selected for the patient, as well as the pharmacy. The facility should automatically default to the facility that you have been assigned to. If it's incorrect, you can go ahead and click on this drop-down arrow and you can search for the correct facility where you're stationed. The reason for this telephone encounter, we have several options that you can choose from. You click down on this arrow and you're able to scroll down. If you do not see the reason for this particular telephone encounter, you can go ahead and free text. The assigned to. You can click on this ellipsis tab. You can actually put the staff's name here. You can free text it. As you can see, I texted to myself and my name autoplay appeared. Or you can actually just search for a role. If it happens to be a care coordinator's role, you can do that, and then you can select from that role. So there are various ways you can actually search for that staff. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave this blank, and I'm going to choose my name, and I signed it. So if you wanted to assign it to a provider, you can also scroll down here and you can start searching for the provider's name. I've changed my mind, so I'm going to go ahead and select AUnity. AUnity is a dummy provider. The provider does not exist. So if you should see any appointments scheduled with AUnity or AUnity assigned as the patient's PCP, please note that that is incorrect and it should be changed immediately. Moving down below here, you have quite a few categories. It's always going to default to the message tab. Here is where you can go ahead and free text your message. And send to the provider or any other staff. Okay. Once that's done, you can click OK, and it will automatically be sent to AUnity. Keep in mind here before you send, I just want to review the status. When you're initiating a telephone encounter, it's going to always be on the open status. Once the encounter is addressed, the person who has addressed the telephone encounter is responsible for clicking the addressed option. And if it's been addressed and documents have been reviewed, you can also select that. So I'm going to go back into open. Okay. Also here you have the right-hand panel. Okay. And you can either select that red jelly bean and it'll disappear. Okay. So once all that's done, you click OK. Note that now that message has been sent to the provider AUnity. And some further down further into this video, I'll show you how to retrieve the actual telephone encounters. Moving right along here, this billing alert tab, it's only for the billing department. Patient documents, if I click on the patient document tab, here is where all our documents are housed. As you can see, there are different categories listed here. You have lab documents, radiology documents, correspondence, and patient documents, and so on. Anytime a document is highlighted in blue, it means it needs an indication that it needs to be reviewed. I'm sorry. And this is why you have here the paperclip. The letters. If I click on the letter tab here, here is where we can actually select a letter to be sent to the patient. We're going to go ahead and click on this ellipsis tab. And here's where we house all our letters. Each letter has been assigned a site. All sites have the same letters. So in this particular instance, I'm just going to select any letter here. I'm going to click here, Anacostia follow-up appointment. If I highlight this letter, I'm going to click OK. Once I do that, I want to hit Run Letters. It's going to ask me, do I want to track this letter for this patient? I'm going to say yes. Once I say yes, I'm going to be able to view the letter that I've selected. Here, if any edits need to be made or if I need to add any additional documentation, I want to click here on this edit option. I want to go ahead and type the additional information. So I'm going to put the date, put in a space. I'm also going to select this option. So now that I have completed making all the additions to this letter, I want to go ahead and make sure before I save it that I select where I want to save this letter. So where in the documents do I want to house this particular letter? I can click here on this drop down arrow, and it's going to give me all the categories that we just recently viewed in the patient documents. Do I want to house this letter within the lab documents, radiology documents, patient documents, social service, or so on? So for this particular instance, I'm just going to go ahead and click on, let's see what we got here. I'm just going to select patient documents. Once I do that, it's going to go ahead and save the letter in this format, and then I can click save. Once I do that, it's going to tell me that it was successfully attached to the patient's record. I click OK. I get out of here, click out of this box. I can go back into my patient document, and as you can see here, my letter was saved. This is the exact same letter that I just made edits to. So moving right along here, once we've done letters, we click on the Encounters tab. Once you do that, here where you'll be able to view all the patient's appointments, whether they've been missed, whether they're future appointments. Keep in mind that it'll be, because this is a patient, a test patient, it's all been in black. It's been not color coded. But when you're actually viewing a live patient, all these visit types have been color coded. Okay. Medical summary. Here is where providers are able to view the patient summary. If the patient's been seen here for OB care, they can also have the option to view the OB summary. RX, if I click on the RX tab, it's actually going to give the providers or the clinical staff pretty much a patient medication summary, and they're able to view that. If they click on the progress note, they're going to have immediate access to the patient's progress note for that visit. Devices, if I click on that, I can see the EKG reports. Problems list, clinical staff can click that to actually see the most updated problem list. As you can see here, we have ICD-10s. We do have one ICD-9 that needs to be converted. They can actually add or remove any problems that have been added to this list. All right. The medical record here, this tab is not being used for any medical records. We do have a HIMSS department that's responsible. Please contact them to give you any documents that you may need. Also, send e-message. This is not being used currently. This is not a secure way. We actually use the portal for that. Account inquiry, we don't use. This is for the billing department as well as the guarantor balance. Letter logs, if we click on letter logs here, it's actually just going to pretty much display any letters that have been drafted for the patient. Fax logs. Fax logs are pretty much a snapshot of all the faxes, prescriptions that have been sent on the patient's behalf. It'll actually also inform you as to whether the fax failed or if it was completed. Action. Actions are a lot like telephone encounter. They're messages. The only difference between a telephone encounter and an action is that an action does not become a permanent part of the patient's record. Meaning that if you click on encounters here, as you can see here, these are titled telephone encounters. These are permanent part of the patient's records, whereas actions, you'll never see them listed here. Let's see, billing logs you don't need. The messenger tab, it's not used. Flow sheets for clinical staff. They're able to retrieve any flow sheets already configured within the system. E-prescriptions log is provider use only. Here's where they're able to to view whether the electronic prescription that was sent to the pharmacy was successful, or whether it failed. PL to 9 here, if there are any assessment codes that have been assigned a ICD-9 code, here's where you can actually convert it to a 10. Okay. Here on the right-hand side, you have the right-hand panel, and this is pretty much a cheat sheet of the patient's medical history. It's a summary. It's broken up into different categories. You got your overview, you got your DRTLA, you have your history and your order sets, and so on. So in your overview tab, it's going to display any global alerts that have been assigned for the patient, any advanced directives, the patient's most updated problems that have been added to the problems list, their medication summary, the allergies, immunizations, and so on. The DRTLA stands for documents, referrals, telephone encounters, labs, and actions. So if I click on that, it's pretty much going to display all those information. It's just broken down into different categories. The history, you got your medical history, your GYN history, OB history, family history, and so on. And then you have the order sets. So let me go back to the overview. So this is pretty much an overview of the patient's hub, the shortcut to anywhere you want to go. So let's exit out of here and continue with the general overview of the EMR. So now that I've shown you how to search for a patient, I'm going to inform you that this green arrow here, if we click on it, it saves the last 5 patients that you previously searched. So it pretty much actually saves you time if you needed to dip back into that patient's chart. The next 3 dots that you see here we called olives, and if you hover over them, they pretty much tell you what they do. They show and hide certain aspects of the screen. So this first one, it says it shows and hides the navigation bar. So if I click on that, as you can see, it hid this navigation band. So if I click on that, it gives me a wider view of the screen. And for the most part, since that band is not needed, I'll just keep the first olive at red. The next two olives show and hide certain aspects of the patient's progress note. So if your role here is in the clinical department, you always want to remain those two olives at a green status. Moving right along here, this jelly bean here with the 2 arrows, it's pretty much your refresher jelly bean. If you click on it, it's going to refresh your screen. These remaining jelly beans, as you can see here, you have quite a few of them. You have some numbers within jelly beans. These are pretty much indications. These are counts of what you have within that particular jelly bean that needs to be reviewed by you. These are tasks, okay? And if it's turned red, that means something that has been sent to you that needs your attention, that's highly important, and so you need to address it ASAP. So the first jelly bean, it's the P, and that's for pre-registration. And if that's pretty much left for the office, the front office side. The N jelly bean, that was just a pilot and for certain providers, and it's still being piloting. The E jelly bean, it's pretty much an indication, is where the providers will get indications from pharmacies that patients need refills. Okay. The S jelly bean. The S jelly bean allows you to navigate from this resource schedule, which is the screen that you have in front of you, to the office visit screen. The D is for documents. It allows you to retrieve or view any documents for that patient, faxes. The R is for referrals. Here is where you're able to generate a referral for a patient or actually just review referrals, the referral module. The mighty T here, the mighty T, the T jelly bean here. Within that T jelly bean, you have different categories. You have here the telephone encounter, which I showed you previously in the video, how to generate a telephone encounter. So if someone's assigned you a message, here's where you're going to see it. If a patient has sent you a web encounter, it'll also be displayed here within the T Jelly Bean. If you're a provider and the billing department has sent you a message that a particular claim has to be corrected, here is where you'll get the notification, as well as actions. If someone sends you an action, it will be also documented within the T Jelly Bean. The L stands for the lab module, and if I click on the L Jelly Bean, it will take you to the lab module. Here is where we house all our lab orders. We have a bidirectional interface with LabCorp. And then we have M for messages. Here is where you're able to send message to anyone within Unity that won't be a part of the patient's permanent record. So let me go back here to the S Jelly Bean. I'm going to go back to the resource schedule. Moving down below here, you see this gray tab. All our slots, all our appointments are set at 15 minutes, so that shouldn't be changed. The first three icons here are not used in anyone's workflow here at Unity. The next calendar with the blue icon, that's your refresh scheduler. If you click on it, it should refresh your calendar view. Here you have two calendars, one with the number 5 and one with the number 7. So if I click on this certain provider and I click on the 5, it's going to give me the provider's 5-day outlook. If I click on the 7, it's going to give them the 7-day outlook. If I click on this man and this woman, which is called the multi-provider view, it'll allow me to view more than one provider. If I go ahead and select a provider, sorry, there seems to be a delay. I'll be able to select more than one provider's daily view. And as you can see here. So now I'm going to deselect these providers. I'm going to go back to my original one. The remaining icons here, we don't use at Unity. Below that, you have your calendar, and you're able to navigate throughout the year with this calendar. Below the calendar, you have a list of all providers as well as resources. Under resources, you will find all your lab MAs, all your dental assistants, and your lab sites. Okay. So now we come to the actual schedule. As you can see here, I do have a patient scheduled for today. Before we tap into the appointment, I want to review the times here, the actual schedule. If it's grayed out at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m., that's a clear indication that the clinic is closed. Please note that each site has been assigned a different color. So if you're a floater, if you're a clinical staff and you're floating from site to site, just keep in mind that when you tap into the schedule, the actual screen may look different because each site has been assigned a different color. So as you can see here in this somewhat green color here, this is an indication to the front desk or to the patient scheduling center that we can schedule appointments. So an appointment has been scheduled. I'm going to go, and as you can see here, it has a somewhat of a fuchsia color assigned to it. So I'm going to go ahead and select and tap on this. I'm going to go ahead and completely close this billing alert. I'm going to ignore this message. And I finally get the appointment pop up. Here is where I'm going to just give you a brief overview of how to schedule an appointment. As you can see here, the facility is UHC Dental. If this is an incorrect facility, you can go ahead and click select, and you get this the list of facilities that you're able to choose from. You have the date that's automatically going to populate to today's date. It's going to default to today's date. You have the provider and the resource. If you needed to select a different provider, you can do so by clicking on this arrow and scrolling down. You have the time. The time of this appointment is from 8 a.m. to 8:15. You have already selected the patient's name. If you needed to see additional information about the patient, you click on Info. Okay, the patient's date of birth, the phone number, and it basically tells you the patient's email address. That means the patient has been web enabled. This green lock that you see here is an indication that the patient has signed up to the health exchange, meaning that if the patient should be out of town and is admitted to any hospital or clinic, his or her provider here at Unity will get some type of indication from the clinic from where the patient was seen. We'll get any notes pertaining to that visit. So here we are. We're at here the visit type. If I click on that, you can see the options of quite a few visit types that we have here configured at Unity. Please note that if you are a provider and you're watching this video, that based on your role here and your discipline group, that all the visit types will be based on that particular disciplinary group, if that makes any sense. Okay. The visit status here, we've selected arrive, but I'll just go ahead and review. Here you have arrived, you have checked out, you have here the patient is checking in from a kiosk, or the patient's at the front desk registering. You also have if it's a duplicate, if the patient's left, if the patient no-showed, if the patient rescheduled by phone, or if it's the wrong patient. So you have quite a few options to select from. So we're going to go ahead and leave this patient marked as arrived at the clinic. And the reason for their visit, also here you have options. Okay. So here we're going to click OK. And once it says OK, you're going to click yes. And as you can see here, it's already documented. Okay, and that's pretty much a general overview of the resource schedule. Now, mind you, everything that's documented on the resource schedule is going to go ahead and transfer over to the office visit schedule. We're going to go back to the S Jelly Bean and go back to the office visit. Now, the office visits, it's pretty much viewed by clinical staff. Here's where they're going to get and see their list of patients for that particular day. As you can see here, it's blank. So let's find out why it's blank. You have a few categories here that must be filled out correctly. If they are not filled out correctly, you may be, if it's not filled correctly, you may not be able to see anything. You'll get a blank screen, or you'll be viewing an incorrect list, and there's a high probability that you'll be documenting in the incorrect patient's chart. So our provider for today is Unity. The appointment time, you have 3 options. You can select all day, morning, or afternoon. The view should always remain at all. The facility, this plays a major role. Always select the correct facility where you are at that current date. Okay, if you are a provider that's hopping from site to site, or an MA, clinical staff, just make sure you select the correct facility. The appointment time, the sort by, you have appointment time, patient name, check-in status, or provider. Clinical staff, some like to choose appointment time or patient name. I suggest you never use check-in status, because then you're relying on the front desk to actually always check in a patient. So I'm going to select appointment time, and the today and the date in this category is always going to default to the current date. So I'm going to go back here to select. I'm going to select the correct facility. And as you can see, once I selected the correct facility, my patient did appear. So now I'm going to go ahead and give you a quick review of all these tabs here. As you can see here, you have a lock that is not locked, and this is an indication that the progress note is still open, that the provider has not locked the note. You have your visit type as family established, and this is coming right from this color. Okay, remember, if I clicked on this, it's coming right from this category here, the visit type. So go back into the office visit, the appointment time, the patient's name, the insurance for this patient, the provider, the reason for the visit, the patient's sex, the age, and the visit status. This is pretty important. So if the front desk staff, the PRCs, have, go back to the resource schedule, if they have selected that the status, that the patient has arrived, it's automatically going to turn green. Okay, so whatever they choose here, whether it's correct or not, it's going to go ahead and transfer to the into the office visit, and it's going to actually state here in the visit status column. So for this particular visit, it states that the patient has arrived. It's going to state the time, that duration the patient's been at Unity so far. Once the MA takes the patient back, they're going to actually indicate what room they're in, the status, and it's going to calculate the cycle time. Okay, this is pretty much almost completed the general overview of ECW. Now I'm going to go ahead and take you to the telephone encounters, the T Jelly Bean. I want to quickly demonstrate how to access telephone encounters. You're going to go ahead and, that have been assigned to you, you're going to go ahead and click on the T Jelly Bean. You're going to go to telephone encounters. Here is your telephone encounter module. It has 4 categories. It has open, addressed, all, and all open. Keep in mind that if you select open, you are only going to be able to view telephone encounters that were generated on November 19th. Okay, make sure that you select the correct provider, or you can always keep it at all. The assigned to, you always want to make sure that your name appears. Okay, the facility, you can always keep it all. So in this particular instance, if I am not Sandra Juarez and I happen to be Dr. A Unity, I can click on A Unity, and it's actually going to populate any telephone encounter that was generated on November 19th. Now, if I click on this All Open tab, it's going to actually give me all the telephone encounters that are still open that have not been addressed. Okay, then I can view them and I can go through each one to actually address them. All the addressed telephone encounters should be housed within this address tab. I'm going to go ahead and click my name here because A Unity doesn't have any. And it's actually going to be for the 19th. Let me just make sure. Let me get for A Unity really quick. Let me go back to the open 19th. I'm going to go ahead and address it. I can click addressed, click OK. Now once I get to the address tab, it'll all automatically appear. So this pretty much concludes the general overview of ECW. Thank you for watching.